What's up, guys? Welcome to What the Freak. Today, I'm excited to have one of my very good friends. I feel like I say that every time, but I actually mean it this time. Not that I don't mean it the other times. Okay, anyways, already off to a great start. Mr. Colter Jackson Stillwell, man of many names and talents. Welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Colter. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a festival director, co-founder of a business called Full Moon PHX that focuses on producing events for local artists, essentially. So we're like a street festival and also try and bring the festival experience home and do it a bunch of times a year and make it super affordable. And been a festival goer a long time and just wanted to be able to have something that was more accessible and more close to home. And that's what I do.
Dope. So rather than having to go out in the woods for 3 or 4 days, you can come for one night in the heart of the city and have the festival experience.
Yeah, and rather than having to be like Tiesto in order to play that festival in the woods, you can play this festival here in your hometown.
So like your homies can be up on stage performing, sharing their talents and their music with everyone.
Hopefully your homies are.
Hopefully.
And hopefully your homies are making art, because everybody should be. Or could be.
Yeah, it's a tricky line there to walk. Should, could.
Yeah, I don't want to tell
benefit
people.
From.
Yeah, I don't want to give people the impression like you need to make art and make people feel bad, like if that's not their thing. But some sort of creation I encourage. And we like to encourage. So I think a lot more people could be creating art than actually are. And in fact, the amount of people who do consider themselves like musicians or artists has decreased by like 50% since the early 2000s.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. On that note, what's your current relationship with art personally for you?
Event production is my art. Like, what is my relationship to creating art, or what is my relationship to art? Like, what role does it serve in my life for other artists to create?
Like more personally you, it's a little more open-ended, but like what is your relationship with art in general? What is your experience with art? Like how does art show up in your life? Like what does that bring to your life? What do you bring to it? I'm just curious to hear a little more on like personally what is your connection with art and creation and creativity?
Word. Yeah, what I would consider art is just anything that somebody has a desire to create, separate from any sort of like money or catering to anybody or something like that. So it's just pure creation out of desire. For me, like my personal connection to that usually rests around like it's usually very others focused. So whereas one person may want to create art that's like, I love just like abstract drawings and like creating this crazy stuff and putting it on my wall. My art is usually very like, I want to create a chill space for people to connect in, or I want to create a big sign that has an arrow that tells people to hug, stuff like that is usually my, like how I relate to art. Same thing with my music style. So I DJ as well. And when I play music for people, it's very like dance floor focused. It's not focused on like me and the show and putting on this big banger of a thing, but rather like who is out there and like how is this making them connect with each other and connect with the night better. And yeah, that's like a decent synopsis of a couple of ways I'd relate to art.
Dope. Love that. What's so kind of part two of that question, in your mind, what is this relationship between, so if I'm creating art, right, I can almost like create art from a couple different intentions. So one of them could be like, I'm just creating this for myself. I'm just doing it for the joy of it. I'm just really inspired and I'm like drawn to, let's say, a specific form of art creation and it's kind of just for me. Versus creating art with a certain audience in mind, how does that change things? So even, for example, it's like for music, you probably just enjoy DJing, you enjoy playing music, you have your own personal tastes and likes and what you want to hear, or like you might put a set together. But then also, at least eventually, there's going to be some type of audience receiving that. So how do you kind of like fit those pieces together in your mind, or like what's the relationship between those, you know?
Yeah, no, good question. So for one, I'll just say that like creation of art on a personal level can be super valuable for like emotional processing or self-expression. So either there's like a part of yourself that wants to be expressed or something that you're feeling that you want to get out, and that could just be DJing in your bedroom by yourself. Obviously, I'm a mobile DJ, so I DJ like weddings and corporate events. I don't DJ like as the artist Colter, so that's like very client focused. So obviously, as a dance floor comes in, or you're like trying to cater to other people, that very much changes how you might play music. And I would say DJing specifically has a lot more like back and forth than maybe like being a singer songwriter. So it's totally up to every artist, like how much do they want to create things that cater to other people versus how much do they want to get on stage and be like, fuck everyone, I'm going to completely express myself. And that's a relationship between like the collective of people who are listening to that music and that artist. And I think the most like beautiful part is when you find an artist who just happens to be like really authentically themselves, and then they put out their art, and then like a large number of people really resonate with that. They're like, wait, I have that inside of me, and I didn't really know that, or like something about this is like really turning me on right now. And then we get these like collective kind of what like those two things converge, and you get like a David Bowie or just like crazy artists like that, or Kurt Cobain, where it's like an entire generation feels represented by this person's personal expression. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I find all this stuff very fascinating, and especially you being, you know, honestly much deeper into the art and music world than I am. I feel like I'm still a bit of a newcomer to all of this, because I didn't really have a personal relationship with music and art until like later in my life than maybe a lot of people. Not that I didn't early on in certain ways, but I feel like I didn't really get it or didn't really care or didn't connect to it in the same way until maybe about 10 years ago, maybe sometime around when I was in college. I started actually like listening to music and knowing who certain artists were, and, you know, doing my own forms of art and creation. So I find it really fascinating, all the different reasons why people create art, and like what creates meaning in creating art, and then how that meaningful art creation can connect with other people.
Totally. Yeah, and everybody has a completely different opinion on this. So I'm just some asshole who also has an opinion about this. But I think like something that specifically interests me is the way in which certain like industries, or certain like the way in which artists are being hired, or maybe like even as far as like the laws of a you know, all these different things, like seeing how that potentially affects art, you know. So for example, like the muralist scene in Phoenix is huge, thankfully, to a lot of people who work really hard on it. There's a big difference between somebody who's getting hired to do murals, somebody who's just creating exactly what they want, versus maybe like the Downtown Phoenix Association is paying for murals to be created. And they're going to want very different things. And sometimes, like, as you get more into the, like, property, real estate development market, like, they're going to want maybe more, like, watered down or kind of nice, pretty, chill art. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's just something that fascinates me, is like the way in which certain types of art, like you can see it come out of these people who are really doing it for what they want or what they care, which is like the underground. And then as it comes out, it kind of gets grabbed by like different industries or whatever, and gets like siphoned into different things. Yeah. It goes way deep.
Yeah, I'm seeing two threads I want to go down here. So one of them is I want to talk about money in relationship to art. So I think that's a juicy topic.
Yeah.
And then the other one I want to talk about that we were kind of just touching on is collaboration or co-creation when it comes to art.
Dope.
So in terms of the money, when you were first earlier describing kind of what art is to you, what I heard was there's kind of this more pure place of creation where someone is inspired and they have a certain medium they want to express themselves through, and that's kind of like the fundamental of art, kind of removed from the commercial aspect. There's kind of just this, art exists, and there's this spark or there's this inspiration for someone to create something. And then at some point, at least for some people, money starts to come into the equation. So I'm just curious to hear a little more about what you think money does when it comes into the equation of art, which I think there's a few different directions we could go there, right? Like there's you're hired to be a corporate DJ for this event. And so there's an audience, there's money exchanging hands, there's certain agreement of what you're supposed to deliver in terms of services. So that's kind of one thing. There's also, artists getting paid for their music, let's say on music streaming services or concerts. So there's kind of that aspect of it as well. And then there's even the more collaborative aspect of, for example, I recently paid for a mural to be done on the side of my restaurant. And I got to work with this amazing muralist, shout out Shella. And we got to co-create something because I had a vision. I had kind of a piece of a bigger vision of inspiration for what I wanted in a mural. And I knew kind of the fundamental energetics of what I wanted in there. But I was not the person to actually create this art piece. And then she came in with her incredible style of mural painting and her energy as well. And she resonated with the concepts that I brought to the table. And we got to more like co-create. So it was less of like me just telling her what to do. And it wasn't just her showing up and doing whatever she wanted. It was like kind of a co-creation where we each brought something to the table. And then, money was also exchanged in that. So start wherever you want to, but I'm just curious to hear a little more opening the can of worms around money and art.
Oh, man, start wherever you want to in that behemoth of a topic. I guess I'll go in reverse. Well, I would ask you, so it sounds like, what was her name?
Shella.
It sounds like on some level she still got to like participate creatively in the creation of this mural, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, like, maybe if we drew a gradient from, like, art to not art, she was, like, somewhere in the middle. Or, yeah, at the very least, she wasn't just, like, a designer who was getting told specifically to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And I think really, like, one question that comes up for me and for most artists that I talk to is like, do they get to be creative on some level? Like that's what matters to an artist in terms of, do they enjoy their job still? Because I've seen a lot of artists like go into jobs and they're maybe using like the handiwork skills that they have that they use for their art, but because they're being told exactly what to do and they don't get any creative freedom at all, it's like very like particularly soul sucking for them. So it comes down to just like having some level of creative agency, I think, is what's important. I don't know if that necessarily like defines something as like more or less art. I don't know if it's actually important to define like what is more or less art. Except for I would say that like just like the authenticity of something is cool, but like at the end of the day, how much is the direction given to your muralist detracting from the authenticity of her work? So is what were the parameters that you gave her? Were the parameters like, hey, it needs to be within this color scheme because that matches the homeowners association, and I need you to put these words in this font and size so that the pedestrians can read it? Like how much of a container how restrictive was that container?
Yeah, good question. I love this. So it was a really interesting experience, and I think for both of us, right? Because being an artist myself, I would actually consider myself an artist now. I've been working on the craft of wrapping for 7-8 years now, and I've created in other ways as well that I would consider myself an artist, which I only more recently can I really feel like I can claim that title. So I understand, especially as a freestyle artist, how important like movement and creative flow is, and like me having freedom within the container that I'm expressing myself in. And so I was very aware that I didn't want to hamper her creativity that she was bringing to the table, and I really wanted to deeply respect her art form and her aesthetic and her energy that she pours into it. And my intention actually was that it would be a way for her to actually just find a new or different way to express herself, that it could actually maybe even expand her horizons. And I believe that is what happened. So it was an interesting process where my goal was to, how do I create a container that I share what's most important for me? And, and then I think the most important part that I think it didn't feel like her creativity was hampered, and, I'm sure she could express a lot better than I could. I don't want to put any words in her mouth, but, it seemed like it was a pretty free space, and I wanted and encouraged her to explore her creative boundaries. And she had a bit of a newer style, or like couple of updated ideas she wanted to try out, and I encouraged her to use this as an opportunity to do that, and I let her know what was most important to me. And so we kind of went through a couple iterations of it. I told her what I liked, what I didn't like. I even went to a few of her previous illustrations and just told her a couple of the elements of her artwork that most inspired me, and so she's able to kind of work off of that. So I actually feel like what happened there was really magical, because it almost felt like the opposite of what you, I think, typically see, and what I think you were describing a lot of, where, I didn't want to be that client who's just like, do this, do that, you have to fit within this box. It was more of a, hey, like, I know you already connect to and have a similar set of core values that my brand does. So that's why I chose you as an artist. It took me 2 years to find a muralist who I actually resonated with, because I already had this idea a couple years before. And so I think for me, having a shared set of core values and things that we cared about and messages we wanted to get on the world, and even just where I met her in more of a spiritual community, and I already knew we had certain things in common. So I think it actually was really easy to find the common ground where we each got to bring what was most important to us to the table, and put it together in a way that actually built it higher than either of us could have done on our own. And overall, the experience felt very expansive. And not that it was a perfect process, it's like there's a couple, earlier drawings that she sent to me that I'm like, I don't think this is quite it. And she kind of knew that too. And she's like, I don't think this is like, but I'm just putting stuff out there so we can figure out the way. And so we were kind of just like, weaving back and forth on this path until both of us were like a fuck yes to it. And we kind of found those ways where we could both, be excited about it. And that's eventually what we ended landing on. So, it's like, I think both of us were willing to state what was important to us, state from our own area of expertise what we were bringing to the table, while at the same time being willing to hear feedback that might, humble us a little bit or go against, our ego of like, oh man, like they didn't like this, or oh, they didn't like that. So yeah, it was a really interesting process, and I can see how easy it would be to, for like a big company or something, just dictate what they want, and how that could be kind of like soul-sucking, as you said, to an artist, to not have that freedom and be like, hey, just fit in this box. It feels a little bit extractive. So I think we tried to the best we could at our first attempt creating something together. of having like an equal energy exchange and like each showing up with, what was important to us while also respecting, what each other person brought to the table. So that was kind of my experience.
Dope. Yeah, I think the feeling both of your excitement at some point through that process is like a really unique and important part of that process. At least for me, when I'm like decision making or deciding what art installation to make or what to do with our team, that focusing on what within the body feels like exciting, like that's one. If I could assign like something, what I was saying earlier, like, oh, there's a desire to make art on some level, free from money. Like, I don't care if it makes me any money, just like making this thing feels cool and I'm like excited about it. And the fact that you guys were able to find that collectively between you two, even though you're a business owner and not a muralist, but you didn't want the muralist to just do anything. Like, you wanted it to be interwoven with you and who Freak Bros is and your brand and all that important stuff. And so finding, setting those parameters, but then ultimately finding what was exciting for both of you and being really comfortable going back and forth about that process. I think that's like super important for co-creation. And I don't think a lot of people, like, there's not often like framework for co-creation. An artist like finding their own creative process is hard enough. I don't even know how many, like, I don't know if you have like, this is my creative process that I dive into. But I think artists also finding creative processes with each other for co-creation is even harder because it doesn't frequently get defined, because art is supposed to be this like, oh, you can't define it, bro. But like, I think you totally can. I think there's at the very, like, those definitions may be vague or abstract, and that definition may not go any further than like that feeling that we feel that we look at each other in the eye and we're like, yes. It may not go any further than that, but that's at least a definition and helpful in co-creation. And I think it's easier sometimes for an artist to co-create with a business owner in this case than maybe like another artist, because you were coming to the table and you already knew in advance that you were like, I agree with this person's vibe and what they're doing, and I want to give them free rein in some capacity. Like, I'm going into this with the intention set that like I want her to put her spin on it, and that I just kind of want to set that out like you wanted that, and then giving that level of like trust and desire to that person can like really light them up. They're like, okay, cool, I know what my container is, I feel really safe to do something within these parameters, and now I just have to find something that excites me and then spit stuff out until something excites him, and then you end up with something where you're like, wow, look at this cool thing. And you probably had a couple of back and forths that you were like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it took a lot of effort, and I think on both of our parts. And also it took, I think, just a basic level of like, I care about this human. Like, I care about this person in front of me. And like, I think it really helped us to already have been friends before creating this art together, because it built a certain level of trust and foundation and connection between us that we were able to communicate even in some of those more crunchy spots where maybe at times I felt like I was actually being a little overbearing and like expressing too much of what I wanted and not giving her enough space. So I think there was a few kind of back and forth there, but I think both of us were committed to finding that center place that felt good for both of us, finding that synergy. And I could see how easy it would be to not be committed to that, because it's just, another number in a balance sheet, or just another, well, we have to get this wall painted, so we just need to get someone to paint it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which you kind of lose something there.
Just go get wallpaper. Yeah. Fuck it.
But to kind of tie it back to the money piece, it actually felt really good to pay her for this. It felt really good. Like, I viewed it as an investment. I was investing in art. I was investing in expressing our core values as a company. I was investing in, creating something that every time somebody walks up to get food from our restaurant, they get to experience this and receive some kind of positive emanation from this piece of art. So like I saw it as investing in my community, really just being a beacon for, because we even wrote in some phrases that were very like uplifting and empowering within the mural. We kind of wove it in there. And so I felt like, man, like this is so worth it. Like I understand why people invest in art now, because they really believe in the artists and what they represent and their energy and just how they show up in the world. I'm more and more understanding that. I wouldn't actually say I understand it yet, but from my own small way, I understand in a way that I didn't used to. I used to not understand, why do people pay thousands of dollars for pieces of art? Like it's just a painting, or it's just paint on a canvas. But it's like, now I get it. Like there's something more that happens in the creation process, that like something is infused into that art, and there's some type of meaning that has been imprinted in it in a very unique way that is worth investing in, and I can actually feel really good about exchanging money for.
Yeah, I remember you saying at one point, you're like, I can't even I can't believe I'm about to spend $1,000 or however thousands of dollars on getting my wall painted. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting over here like, oh, man, now you know what it's like. We pay that much, and then we paint over it. Mm-hmm. Two totally different worlds.
Yeah. On a similar note, I'm curious, how do you select artists who play at your festival, right? Because you don't just select anyone. There has to be at least some type of criteria that someone is a good fit or a good match to perform or share their art at your festival. So I'm just curious, even if just on a basic or general overview level, like what does your brand represent, and what type of artists are you looking to come and play at your festival?
It's kind of a Venn diagram. So I think some of the things that we focus on, obviously earlier I said that my general artistic style is focusing more on like, how is this creating experiences for the people around me or my community, as opposed to like, I want to create art because I want to, like, my deepest intention is to get really big, which is totally fine. Like, respect for those people. But I think not enough artists realize that like that's the bar that is set. And people think like, well, I'm not going to learn to play piano or play guitar because I'm never going to be like Alicia Keys. So the barrier to entry feels so high that they're like, what's the point in me doing it? When I see all these people on Instagram who are like way better than I'll ever be and doing it professionally. So I think not a lot of people envision a reality where they can make music that's just for their community, and that they could play for people who live in the area around them and give them like a really special, unique experience, whether that's because the music is about the experience of living in their community or, stuff like that, that's like more related to just like zoomed in, which we've seen at Full Moon Festival, which is just like the artists that have played for us have had just as good of responses as the DJs, bands, stuff that gets booked coming from other countries, if not more, sometimes, because a myriad of reasons. Sometimes people just like to see people put on for their city or what have you. So to answer your question, I think that that's like one big piece of it. Is like, are you community focused or are you self-focused? Like, are you going on there to play a DJ set that is going to co-create with the other DJs for the night and create the vibe of what that stage is intended to be? Or are you there to like, screw everything else, I'm just going to go as hard as I want because it's for me? And it's very like self-focused. So that's one thing that we look for. And all of our stages have like a description for each stage, and it's not genre specific, which they kind of are and have been, but we've tried to lay out each stage with a description that's more of like the intention or purpose behind the stage. And then when we book those artists for that stage, we'll give them that description and say like, hey, this is like what the intention of this stage is. Like, we encourage you to try and like play a role in that. So
like if a stage is supposed to be more like kind of high energy, intense, more dance music, you might attract certain specific genres that are a better fit for that. But it's not necessarily just like the hardstyle stage or like the techno stage necessarily.
Yeah.
I know you have like techno snobs who do kind of curate a stage usually, but I like that it's like more intention focused, and then the genres kind of will fit or mold in there. Or even artists that are in a certain genre, right, can sound very different from each other. So I bet that the intention you have will, even within a specific subgenre, help those artists to know more, like kind of curate their set towards like the intention and the energy that you're asking them to bring to this stage.
Yeah, which is, I think, what people are looking for a lot more when they go to a festival, is they're not thinking like, and some people do, but I think really what's underneath it, 'cause some people are like, oh, I really want some drum and bass right now, but what they really mean is like, I want music that's at this certain energy level, like I want this vibe right now. So somebody shows up, they're like, man, I just want to like party, like I want to go hard. Cool, party rock stage. Ends up having a lot of dubstep, but if somebody wants to play a psytrance song or a drum and bass song, or even like a Nirvana song has gotten played on that stage, cool, that's the place for that. Somebody shows up and they're like, you know what, like I'm feeling like I really just want to have like a more low-key, like soulful kind of time, more intentional. Well, they're all intentional stages, but that kind of vibe, cool. Go to the Hartshaw. That's where that's where this started, essentially, was because me and John, who co-founded the event, our music tastes are very different. And we both love the Hartshaw. I love house music and techno. He loves experimental bass music. And so we're like, all right, well, I guess this stage is going to become both of that. And then we learned over time that, like, oh, the soul of this stage is actually soulful music. It's actually like heart-centered music. It's actually music that makes you feel connected with the people around you, that kind of stuff. And so that stage completely is like separate from any genre, and usually goes from starting with like experimental bass, and then by the end of it, it'll be like banging soulful house music, you know? So, and then all the DJs on that stage do a really good job of playing off of each other and into each other, you know? And so it's this whole experience, and it's really cool too, because what people otherwise would have been like, I'm a house head or I'm a bass head, you know, which is how people are really divided in the music community, especially electronic, is now like, oh, I just like this kind of vibe. Like I actually like music in this way. So yeah, we went on a big tangent from how do we choose artists, but
no, that's awesome. I love that. And what's the weird connection that's happening in my mind right now as you described all of that is it's kind of like food cuisines too.
Yes. Art. Also art.
Edible art.
Yeah.
Edible art. Yeah, because it's like, you know, in terms of, let's say, pizza, because that's something I know a little bit about, there's different styles of pizza, right? And I think previously people have been very almost hyper-focused on certain cuisines, like certain styles of pizza. It's like, oh, I'm all about Neapolitan pizza. Oh, New York pizza is the best, like, or, you know, Chicago style. And it's almost like you're saying, like almost like a dividing thing in a way. Like it's a unifying thing within that specific subgenre of food, but it's also a dividing thing between people who all love pizza.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, like your style pizza sucks or mine is better.
You like Chicago deep dish pizza? Fuck you.
Exactly. That's like literally what's happening. Sometimes, not everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so interesting to me. So like our pizza, people ask me what style of pizza it is, and I honestly have a hard time saying at this point because we started off out of more of a Neapolitan tradition, and that's still probably the closest we're to, but we're also a bit more like New York style pizza in a way. So we're not traditional Neapolitan. I guess you'd call us like neo-Neapolitan. But for me, that's not really even important, or that doesn't most accurately describe our pizza and my experience of our pizza. So I would more group our pizza into like we create energizing pizza. We create high vibe pizza. And those to me are better descriptors of like the kind of pizza that we make than a specific like style of pizza, because it's like more about how people feel when they eat our pizza and what goes into our pizza and the decisions that we've made in order to put together this pizza that has become this very unique thing that people really love our pizza. People who love our pizza really love our pizza. And it's, it's so fascinating to me that people are so drawn to our pizza when I'm not a professionally trained chef. I've literally just figured all this out as I've gone. I didn't go to culinary school. I didn't really have any major mentors. I had a guy who first taught me how to make pizza. But then beyond that, it's like I've learned from YouTube. I've learned from the people who've worked from me. I've just kind of experimented and tried things out and upgraded our dough formula based on, what I read on forums. And it's kind of just taken on a life of its own. It's kind of like gravitated towards its own unique vibration and its own unique style. And people, I think, connect to our pizza because they feel a certain way after they eat it. And people have like a shared experience of how they felt after eating our pizza. And not that everybody's experience is the same, but I'm really connecting this to what you were talking about, where for me it's more about what is the vibe that we're trying to create here. Why am I eating Freak Roast Pizza? Because I want to feel a certain way after consuming this food, after consuming this edible art. And I'm just seeing a lot of parallels there with like consuming certain types of music because I want to feel a certain way, or it's a certain vibe that I connect with and resonate with.
Love that. I love hearing about the different like beefs in other communities, because I grew up like hearing all about like the house and techno beef all the time. And then I learned over time that like, man, pizza community like goes hard. There's total beef. Like horse community, oh yeah, there's beef.
Every community,
across
I'm sure.
the board. Yeah, across the board. But no, it totally is like, and can be limiting. And I think a lot of people come into a community or genre and they just like, they think that like, oh, this is like what I need to do to produce music. And there's value to different genres because those genres like kind of describe a vibe. So it's easy to be like, oh, I like this. But I think those, like now that the genres have been created, especially now that the music industry is very, very different, because it used to be like the music industry 20, 30 years ago where artists were putting out albums instead of releasing singles, and everything was going through a record company or a record label instead of being individual. So now you have these like filters that are the record label agencies, and they're saying like, we don't want that, like disco's hot right now. So they're like not even accepting anything. So like music, and that's where the term like alternative music, stuff like things like that started to kind of sprout up, because everything was so segregated at that point. So now I think all the genres and everything, like everyone's having an identity crisis because they're like, man, what genre is this? Like what? And they're starting to realize like, oh, there is none. Like, and they're useful, but genres also are like totally ineffective or like inconsistent in describing certain types of music. Sometimes the descriptor for a genre is like music that came out during this time period in this location. Sometimes the descriptor for a certain genre of music is like more specific. It's like the music is 4 on the floor in between these 2 BPM and in this type of key, and it has this specific like drum beat, like booksh, booksh. So those are very different descriptors and tell very different stories about like what kind of music you're listening to, and like are different for like making decisions about that, you know. And same thing in food. Like there's certain types of food that's like, unless this thing is made in Italy, it's not real Parmesan.
Yeah, it's not a real pizza. It's not a real Neapolitan unless you make it this specific style. In this, literally, they have like this many millimeters thick. If it's more than this many millimeters thick, you cannot call it authentic Neapolitan pizza.
Really?
They have specific standards for it to be certified like authentic Neapolitan. There's a whole like
Neapolitan gatekeeping, man.
Yeah. It's the thing. They literally have like a seal of approval if you're an authentic Neapolitan pizza maker.
Damn, that's cold. I do think that food is a great analogy as well, though, because food is, like, in my experience, from what I've seen, like, food used to be compared to what it's becoming, the main intention of food previously was to, like, and I guess this depends on the genre of food, but a lot of genres of food were just intended to, like, incapacitate and just like be so filling or like so delicious or what have you, as opposed to what you're describing, which is like I want this to like integrate with the rest of my life better, like more of a lifestyle thing. Mm-hmm. Same thing with music festivals. It's like, oh, I want to send this so hard and just have the most incredible experience in my life and go to Coachella for 4 days, but it's not something that I do regularly. And when I do it, like I'm kind of tapped out the 2 weeks and before and after, you know. It's not like necessarily integrated with like, how is this actually affecting my life?
Yeah. The word that's coming to me right now is like ingredients. Like, what are the ingredients that we're putting into a song? What ingredients are we putting into our food? And like, even like, what is the energy? So like, what is the ingredients? Let's say for a song, for example, what are the different instruments I'm putting there is one way you can look at it. I'm putting in drums, and I'm putting in a hi-hat, I'm putting in a saxophone, putting in these weird dolphin sounds. So those are like specific instruments or sounds, right? So that's like one way of looking at what makes up a song. And then similar to the food comparison, it's like, all right, well, on pizza, for example, it's like I have the dough, I have the sauce, I have the vegetables, I have the meats if there's meats on there, I have other, you know, odds and ends and weird ingredients I might throw in there, you know, throw a little pineapple on there. No offense to the pineapple haters. I mean, offense to the pineapple haters. That's a whole thing too. People love or hate pineapple on pizza. That's
people get in fist fights over that.
I think it's funny. I just am like, y'all need to find something better to fight about.
People go to war. I mean, you say that as a pineapple-liking guy. I'm not a pineapple-liking guy on pizza.
I mean, that's cool. Much respect if you like them or don't, but this is... It's not where I'm going to pour even if I like pineapple, I'm not going to pour my energy into convincing anyone that pineapple should or should not be on pizza, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's not like I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be mad at you for it. But at the end of the day, like if there's a birthday party and one of those pizzas is ruined by pineapple and then somebody couldn't eat that pizza when, like, you know, that pineapple lover could have liked something else that everybody else would have liked. It's just, I digress. The pineapple's so far out there that I think people are just like, what? Why did you put that pineapple on the... But hey.
Yeah, I mean, barbecue sauce is sweet. Why is that so different?
No, two different kinds of sweets. One's a citric, acidy kind of sweet. I digress.
I think you just have never had pineapple with the correct complementary ingredients on a pizza.
Look, I'll try anything once.
Okay.
And I'm open to having my mind changed. But Freak Bros doesn't have a pineapple pizza on the menu.
Not on the menu. I'll have to make a special for you soon.
Special secret pizza. The other concept that came up for me while you were describing that and comparing the food and the music, or the thing that I think a lot about when consuming food and like the ingredients of it, is some food is straight up just like designed to be addictive. I don't know on what level the designers of this food, like that's their intention. You know, are they aware of this and that's why there's that much salt in that food or that much sugar in that food?
The short answer is yes. It goes very deep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's literally deep scientific like research, like big food corporations like investing just millions and millions of dollars into figuring out the most addictive compilation of ingredients possible to maximize addiction. It's literally, that's literally where we've come from.
I hate it. Which, like, it's fine. I don't want to take away. I don't want to.
You love your Twinkies as much as the next person? Is that right?
I don't like Twinkies. Like, I personally, the less I eat that kind of food, the more being stimulated in that way is, like, uncomfortable for me. But the same thing happens in pop music. The amount of time before the chorus in a pop music song has, like, shortened over time to, like, I think it's like 10 or 15 seconds. So when a song comes on the radio, you're going to get that drop 10 to 15 seconds in, which is all good. I'm a wedding DJ. I love pop music, but I think there's something to consider there. It's like, what is the root intention? And as an American who lives in a super capitalistic society where I'm getting advertised all the time, making decisions about what to consume is really, really hard. And one valuable thing that I've found to help guide me is the intentions of the person creating the product. So is the intention meant to addict me? This is one of the reasons I quit vaping. I quit smoking because I found vaping. And then I quit vaping because I eventually realized, I was like, wait, this person just gave me another, like, need. Like, I have to eat, I have to sleep, I have to drink. And this person just, like, gave me another one. And, like, man, if I just stop this for long enough, like, it just was like an energy thing. I was like, this is just, like, inefficient energy-wise. Like, I'm just draining money doing this thing, and it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So, yeah, that is a way in which I kind of, like, determine whether or not I want to consume a product. Is like, is it Campbell's soup? And they clearly put, like, as much salt and sugar as they legally could in there to get me hooked on it? Or is it somebody who, like, made their own soup because they're like, I'm tired of this. Like, this is how I like to eat, and I'm going to sell it to you now.
Yo, that's big. That's big. The intention. What is the intention that this person who created this thing that I'm going to consume, what did they put into this? I know for me, it's like one way that I analyze or evaluate things in my life is how nourishing is this for me on multiple levels. And that's also why one of our taglines for Freak Bros is nourish yourself, body, mind, and soul. Because we're consuming things all the time, right? It's like, food is a very tangible way that we're consuming things, a very sensory way that we're consuming things. But yeah, we're consuming music, we're consuming media, we're consuming other people's energy that we're around, and how they treat us and how they communicate and how they show up. We're always consuming things. So it's like, what am I consuming and how does that make me feel? And is this a more surface level, it's just like kind of hitting a quick hit of something, quick fix of something, or is it actually hitting on deeper levels? And I have that experience with music as well, where there's certain music that I'll hear it, and for a moment I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun, or oh, that was kind of cool. But, like, there's nothing much that's, like, rooting me into that music. I don't feel deeply resonant with it. Whereas other music, I can, like, feel it. It's like, whoa. Like, something about this music is, like, hitting me, like, in my soul. And I, like, keep coming back to that kind of music. And I'm sure that's different for each person, right? This could actually go in an interesting direction of, what is good art and what is bad art.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask that.
And what is the, and how is that, like, uniquely related to each person? And how do you judge good and bad art? How does somebody else judge good and bad art? And what do we mean by that? I digress, though. Maybe we'll go there in a second. But, back to the nourishing thing, it's like there's certain types of music that nourishes me in a deeper way, similar to how certain foods nourish me in a deeper way. And I think there's reasons for that. I don't think it's by accident. I think it's very much by design, as you were kind of alluding to. And same for, food. Like, when we create a pizza, I think there's a reason that certain people keep coming back to us because we are nourishing them on a deeper level. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's from the ingredients we select, buying mostly organic produce, organic flour made fresh, make the dough fresh every day, fermenting it for 24 hours. So there's like kind of that, but then there's also the people. It's like the people who work for us have a very specific energy that they bring. And we're very selective with the kind of person who's a good fit to work with us, because I understand that, yes, you are eating this food and that's part of the experience and that's what you're paying for, but there's also an energy exchange that happens both directly between people when they're ordering, when they're picking it up, when they're just talking to us, seeing us. And there's a relationship between the energy that the people who are making this food are putting into the food. And I believe that is felt and can be experienced. It's like, I'm actually not worried about someone, let's say, copying my recipes, because I know that they don't bring the same energy, and that there's a lot that goes into putting the type of energy we do into the food. And they're always going to be a step behind us, right, if they're copying us, because there's a reason why we make certain decisions and have gotten to certain recipes or certain external outcomes, which will continue to increase and improve over time. I think that's similar to music, where it's like you can copy someone's formula of how they put a song together and what instruments they use, but people aren't going to feel the same way as they do when they're really experiencing a great artist who's really pulling deep from within themselves and pouring that into the music and being creative and being innovative and leaning into their edge. There's just a different experience. Even if it's the same fucking instruments, the same drum kit that you're using, it's going to be a different experience, I think, based on the energy that someone's putting in. And man, that could go probably really deep. We could probably go really deep into that. Like, who is this person? What is their life experiences? And what have they gone through? And why do they make certain selections in their music? And, what are they putting into this song that someone else is not using the same set of instruments? I find all of that just really, really fascinating.
Well, it's the age-old secret ingredient of cooking. It's made with love. Mm-hmm. And I will say, you'll have to bleep this out, but I went to another pizza shop, and it was not a good experience. It was actually I talked to you about it. You can bleep it out. I went to Fired Pie. Okay. And dude, when I was ordering that pizza and going through that process, like, they were not present. They did not give a single shit. Not that I want them to, come on, I'm paying you, like, give me better service, but you could just tell compared to a Freak Bros where people are like aligned with it and like they're stoked on some level to be there.
Yeah.
It was not that. It was the opposite of it. It was very much like, this is very transactional. I'm just here to do this thing. Here's your pizza.
It's the typical watered down, as you grow, you get watered down type of model. And I think that's why I kind of want to puke every time someone says the word franchise. They're like, oh, are you going to franchise? I'm just like, no. No. Yeah, are we going to grow? Yes. Are we going to expand? Yes. But to me, franchise has kind of this energy of, oh, I'm just trying to blow this thing up or multiply it or get investors and make more money. And
bag.
It's just somehow disconnected from the essence of why that thing was started in the first place and why people fell in love with it in the first place. And I see that happen most of the time whenever a business scales, is they lose connection to some degree to that essence. Certainly it's still there, otherwise people wouldn't keep going back and their business would completely dissolve. But I think we've just accepted that happens, right? We just accepted that when a business gets to a certain degree, they're going to lose some of what made them special. Or even let's say an artist, for example. It's like, if you go mainstream, it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to, I'm not friends with Billy anymore. He blew up. He went mainstream. He's not one of us anymore. He's not part of, the crew anymore. He's no longer underground. So he's therefore sold out and we don't fuck with him anymore.
Which comes back, this is a good full circle. You're a big artist. You started because you had this soul project and you needed to express these emotions and do this thing. People heard it, they liked it, yada yada. Now you're going on big tours, you're selling out stadiums or big venues. There's people whose jobs literally rely on you. And so you're getting this pressure to hey man, it would just I'm not trying to get you to change your art, but like if you could just put these like hot girls in this music video, like that would mean a bunch because like, you know, Jerry here, he's got kids to feed. You know, it just, and that's how it happens in the music industry at least. It's just like little things here and there where it's like you're doing more stuff not out of just like pure desire to do it, and you're doing so you're doing less stuff out of pure desire to do it, and you're doing more stuff because it's like fits an algorithm or is good for marketing or to get, you know, and because there's this like machine, you know, that's relying on you essentially to do it. So like I think, yeah, you're always going to have some level of that, but too often things expand too quickly, or people don't have an awareness of that, you know, or maybe they're not set in their intention that they're like, sorry, Bob, I know you got kids to feed, but like I didn't start this project to feed your kids, so I'm going to make whatever music I want. And that's when the world goes like, fuck yeah. Like they're doing whatever they want. I love this artist.
Yeah. Man, this is just like so personally relevant for me right now because we are preparing to scale in a big way, and we've been working towards this, I mean, for a while now. I actually had 3 opportunities last year presented to me to expand, and I said no to all 3 of them because they weren't aligned, and I could tell that we were going to lose something. We were going to lose connection to the essence of what makes us unique, and not even because the people necessarily had bad intentions. I think some of them had actually particularly good intentions, and they genuinely just love our brand and wanted to see it grow and wanted to be a part of it and wanted to bring certain skills to the table that, or connections that would be, they thought would be valuable for us. And to a degree, I could see that. But ultimately, I could just feel, and I trusted in my gut, that they didn't have a deep enough connection to the essence of what we're doing, and they would have taken some of the control that I currently have and that me and my core leadership team have, that it would have taken the business in a slightly veered off direction, and we wouldn't have been on path anymore. We wouldn't have been as deeply aligned and in integrity with the core essence of the business, of the business's soul, even, if you will, if we had said yes to those opportunities, because we would have been, just playing to other people's, and they just have different priorities of what they value and what they care about. And I could just tell it was different than my priorities. And me as the creator of this thing, who's most in tune with the essence, I feel a sacred duty to protect that essence. And I think that's what I would actually love to see more of in the world, as you were just saying, is creators who really deeply trust in their own creative essence and the responsibility they have to stay as true as they can to that essence and to continue to cultivate that and to grow that and increase the potency and the creativity of that essence. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I think that's like a tall order to ask. And yet, I think it's also the most satisfying when we experience that. And like people know. Like I think people know to a certain degree when someone has really stayed true to their essence. You can like feel it, and it just comes off in a certain way. Like that person comes off with a different energy than someone who has just gotten to a certain point and says, okay, like good enough. Like, yeah, you're right. You know, let's just put these girls in this video. And again, maybe that is an authentic thing for you if that genuinely excites you and you want to go in that direction, and that's going to like align with your deepest creative vision, but maybe it's not. And maybe you actually just want to make more of this type of music video where it's more chill and vibes and, you know, it's more about like this wavy aesthetic or something. It's like, but maybe that's not as immediately commercializable. And yet I think kind of the funny thing is that an artist who sticks to that in the long run, I think those are the artists who eventually kind of create their own subgenres. They kind of create their own path that people to connect to, because they kept saying over and over again, like, this is me and this is dope and this is what I want to do. And eventually, if, you know, that's their path, other people resonate and see that. They're like, damn, J. Cole's been just sticking to who he is and the vibe he's creating. He's just creating his own lane. Fuck everything else. You know, he's like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to just go down this path. And I think, at least, I guess I'll just speak for myself. Those are the type of artists that I most respect. Those artists who really, I can feel they stayed as true as possible to their artistic integrity and to the essence of like what they really connect to when they're creating their art.
But does it necessarily, like, one component of what I heard was that, like, you stick to that long enough and eventually people, like, hear it and they connect with it. And I would, like, I'm on the fence about that. On one level, I could see that, like, there's some fundamental, like, spiritual, biological, whatever experience that this person is channeling, and, like, eventually enough people will connect to that. Like, could connect to that.
Yeah.
Well, I could be in the camp that it's like will. There is potentially a will. Like, there's such deep truth to just, like, that kind of ecstatic experience of just being like, yo, this is dope, to those people who channel it. Or it could be could. And the question is like, do these artists prioritize sticking with that for themselves and this is what I really like? Or do they eventually get caught up in like, I actually prioritize turning this into a job?
That's a tough one.
Or turning it into fame or whatever they're trying to get out of it. That's different than just the art.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think every artist has to decide for themselves what their relationship is to their art and what role they want it to play in their life, and to be constantly tuning into the deeper truth of those things.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, for example, some of the artists that actually inspire me the most, literally almost nobody knows about them. Like, literally some of my closest friends are some of the dopest rappers I have ever met that make the most deeply soul resonating music that I've ever heard for myself. And maybe nobody beyond a handful of people will ever hear this artist's music, but it doesn't matter. And I think there's this kind of weird false form of success that we've come to put onto artists, where it's like you're not truly successful unless a lot of people know about you and you're able to make a full living from it, when actually you might be making a very deeply impactful positive wave with your artistry. Even if only 5 people ever hear your art, what if that person is the one who has 1 million followers, but they deeply fuck with your art and that deeply impacts them? You are now in turn impacting 1 million followers because of the way that your art has affected this other human being. So viewing things like that to me is just like, it allows me to relax more because I realize that each person has their own unique path, and maybe me staying true to my art will never get me 1 million followers. If that's the case, so be it. Maybe it is my path, maybe it's not. But me staying true to my art, I believe, will always, if I'm genuinely cultivating that and going deeper in myself, will affect the people it's meant to. And I can trust in that. So, and that's just my belief. Other people are welcome to believe something different. You're welcome to believe something different. But that's more and more the beliefs I resonate with lately, is that an artist who stays true to themselves will deeply impact the people that they're meant to, who resonate with the medicine they bring in their art, if they continue to cultivate that in themselves and make more deeply meaningful art for themselves. There's got to be other people who also deeply resonate with that. So love to hear any thoughts you have or feedback on that piece.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, at the end of the day, also, like, how does that experience feel to you, Like, tying it back to, like, we get really focused on, like, being successful or being the thing, but it's, like, cool, when you were creating that art and you got to finally hear the song or see the music video, like, how did that experience feel? Same thing with the pizza. Like, what was your felt experience after? And it's, like, cool, as long as you just keep doing that and you had an entire life. Like, I went to your music video premiere. You were ecstatic. I was ecstatic with you. It was dope. Success, like monetary success or fame, success aside, if you had an entire life filled of those moments where you were genuinely like, fuck yeah, dude, like I love this art, and I was on your side like, yeah, Nathan, how would you feel about that life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would feel fucking awesome.
Yeah, you'd be like, cool.
Like, dude, my whole process of creating that whole song was deeply fulfilling and worthwhile in and of itself.
Yeah.
Literally to the degree that if nobody heard that song besides the people who made it, I would have been totally happy pouring all that effort and time and money and energy into it. It would have been 100% worth it. And this is where it kind of crosses this line of the part of me that actually wants more people to hear my music, which is, if this was such a deep medicine for me, and then next level for the people involved in this project, and then next level the people who, my close friends and family who experienced it, there's got to be more people in the world that this is medicine for, that this would be deeply impactful for, that it would be soul satiating for and nourishing for. And even to the degree of, man, like, what if I'm actually doing a disservice by not at least putting a little bit more effort into marketing this, or like sharing it with a wider audience so that people who do resonate will be able to find it? Because it's like, in the scheme of all humans, basically nobody knows about my music and who I am. Almost nobody does. I'm a little ant on a big world, and that's cool. Like, and I'm fine with that for now. And it felt like at some point, and maybe this is kind of the last good topic we can wrap up on, is it felt like in some point, although everything I just said, it's gonna seem like I slightly contradict it for a moment, but although it was so deeply fulfilling for me, just in the creation process, I feel like in creating that song, I could feel that song was meant for others to hear. I feel like there was almost like an audience built into the creation process that I perhaps wouldn't have experienced the deep fulfillment that I personally did if there weren't others who also resonate with the deeper energetics of what I poured into that song and that process I went through and how valuable it was for me. I could almost just feel that there's others out there who would deeply resonate. And now I've met some of those people. Some of the people who are in my life or who just recently came into my life, they're like, dude, thank you for creating this song because it touched me on such a deep level. Like, I started crying at this certain part. Like, I've heard this from multiple people, how deeply it's affected them. And I was like, humbled. I was just like blown away. So I'm more and more questioning, like, is creating art just this personal thing that I'm doing, in my bedroom? Or am I actually, even in that process where I'm seemingly alone, I'm actually connected to other people when I'm creating this?
Lots to unpack.
Yeah.
Both. I mean, if you're asking, I don't know if that was rhetorical.
Yeah, I know it's not necessarily rhetorical. I'm curious to hear just what's coming up for you after I just dropped all of that.
I feel like, yeah, at the end of the day, like, just because something is enjoyed by the masses or is connected with other people doesn't change the fact that you made it for yourself, or that you made it with. There's a difference between making it with the intention of another person versus making it with the intention to sell it to another person. Two very different things. Making it with the intention of another person is just like me making you a pizza because I love you and I'm like, I want to put all these good things in this pizza. I'm thinking about what's the greatest good for you. Me making it to think like, oh, what's gonna sell this pizza is thinking like potentially what's like the most addictive, or creating habits or loops within you that may not actually necessarily serve you. So you can still create art with that other people in mind. I remember specific moments with Full Moon Festival having visions of certain like landscapes of the festival and certain moments happening. And then I would get really ecstatic and think about those visions and be excited, and then would make those things happen. Like those elements that I saw would bring to the festival, and those were very focused on like actual humans and all those, it wasn't like I didn't just Festival production is an interesting art form because I don't do it in my bedroom for myself. I can't. It'd be very weird to like be playing like Roller Coaster Tycoon. You know, that doesn't excite me. Like it needs feedback. It needs people in it. But yeah, I remember specifically having those moments and then activating them for others. But one thing I'll say about Full Moon is that we have generally always been focused on like, what do people actually want and what's actually going to turn the dial and what's actually going to make people go like, wow, that was like super dope, rather than what's going to bring people out. A lot of people and a lot of the music industry is focused on like what's going to bring people out, what's going to get people to buy this song. And it's pretty easy. Like I like to go to events. Well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I like to go to events. And so I just think about like, man, what would I have fun at? Sometimes I take ideas from like, you know, not-for-profit events that I do with my friends and bring those in. And I just think like, what would make me have an ecstatic experience? Should I, whatever that is, I'm not going to give out my secret sauce. But yeah, so all those moments have been very like others focused, but it's not being others focused that's the problem. It's profit being your highest motivator that can water down the experience. So if you have something dope and you like it, then hell yeah, you should spend some money on advertising it. Your intention for advertising is potentially profit, you know, because you do have a limited amount of money and maybe you want to make that money back or what have you, but the product wasn't made with that intention. You see what I'm saying? So there's different ways you can section off. Like don't get me wrong, there are parts of Full Moon Festival that are very like, we have to put on our business pants and, you know, run a cost analysis and figure out how profitable something's going to be or make sure that we get people paid, you know, like all that, like part of business. But we find ways to section that off from the creative parts and don't let them bleed into each other. We don't want a leaky
separation of money and creativity. It's like separation of church and state.
Yeah. Novel idea. You would think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. Wow. It's wild to me how it's a subtle but important distinction of like, what are your priorities in creating? And whatever you're creating, right? It's like you're creating a festival, you're creating a piece of art, creating a piece of food that someone's going to eat. Are you creating this to profit from it, which I think is kind of the energy of like extraction or taking from someone.
It's the lamest reason for creating something.
Doesn't feel good and is super, super lame. And, you know, I also don't want to overly demonize money because that's important and it's just a representation of energy and resources and ability to make things happen. It's a part of the equation.
Yeah.
But I think it's non-optimal, to put it in the most, you know, non-charged or judgmental kind of way. It's like non-optimal to have that be the focus, because now you're focusing on something that actually doesn't exist. It's not actually real because money's not actually real. Profit is not a real thing. It's not something you can hold. It's not tangible. It's not feelable, other than you could feel a dollar bill, but you can't feel money like that. But what you can do is you can have experiences. You can feel things in your body and you can have an experience. No matter if it's a product or a service we're buying, ultimately, and to some degree, we're buying that product or service in order to have an experience, in order to have a feeling, in order to be in a certain state of being. And for me, that's always the focus. I'm like, how is what I'm doing enhancing the human experience, whether it's my own or somebody else's? And for me, that feels a lot more real and connected than how can I maximize profit? You know, how can I, with creating the best human experience for somebody, then with that being the main focus and the big rock, now that's created within this ecosystem of this being our primary focus, within that system, within that container, I do want to maximize my efficiency of my resources so that we can best utilize our limited resources at any given time to serve that purpose. But it's like, who is serving who? What is serving what? Is I think kind of the where a lot of business gets it backwards, and even, art that kind of does turn mainstream in a bad way. It's like you've prioritized business and profits over the creation process and the experience that you're having and that someone else is having. So yeah, that's where I kind of sit on that end of things. Because money's important. It's like at some point you have to buy food, you have to take care of certain basic needs. But when you're sacrificing the integrity of something special in order to do that, you kind of lose something, or you get overly greedy. It's like, I think people need to question, what am I even going to do with this extra money, and what am I going to lose? What am I sacrificing in order to squeeze a little bit more profit out of this thing in the short run? What am I losing in the long run, and how am I ultimately going to pay for that anyways?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is the value that you're potentially losing long run could be massive, because it's not like it's not necessarily just like, oh, this is better, like this is arbitrarily better, or like this is like, oh, we want the underdogs to win, like we want good to prevail. Like it's actually better for business, and obviously those things take a long time to pan out sometimes because of, we're bodies and we get addicted to Campbell's soup and nicotine. It takes a long time.
Or Little Caesar's $5 hot and ready pizza.
Oh, God. Ugh.
But you're going to pay for it. It's like you can buy a $5 pizza, or you can buy a $15 pizza. You can buy a $15 pizza now, and over time, your health is going to be good, or even improve, I would dare to say, because of everything we pour into that and how you're going to feel afterwards and how it's going to contribute to your overall health and well-being in the long run. Or you can buy a $5 pizza, save some money up front, and then you can pay for that in low energy, in higher risk for different diseases and such. And there's more and more science that connects all of this together, right? Like it's not rocket science. Like it just makes sense. If you're having the shittiest, most processed, most maximized for addiction type of foods that you constantly are putting in your body, that's not going to be good for your system in the long run, and you're going to pay for that. It's just, do you want to pay up front, or do you want to pay down the road? And do you want to pay with your daily experience of not feeling as great?
Yeah, what you want to watch out for is the $15 pizza that's also shit.
I'm not going to name names, but I ate at one of those places recently, and it was, as my dad put it, I had to bend over to pay the bill.
And not in the good way.
Not in a good way.
Not in the good way, folks.
It was not fully consensual. Anyways, got to watch out for that as well. When, we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole of how do you price your art and how do you price your pizza, but I feel like we'll save that for part 2, perhaps.
That's a phase 2 thing.
Yeah.
So we could go deep in that.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, things you want to wrap up here before we wind down for the day?
Oh, man. Go create something. If you haven't, at least explore the thought that maybe creation in any form, even if nobody sees it, could be valuable and exciting for you. Even if you're making food but don't follow a recipe. Like, just create something. Go color a coloring book, or I don't know. Just try it.
Crayons on your wall.
Crayons on the wall. Tag your house up. Screw your landlord. Fuck the patriarchy. End show.
Mic drop. Except that it's on a stand.
Boom.
Boom. Wow. Well, there you have it. Make art, create shit, and be a good human. That's what I got from this.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Colter, for joining me. It was a blast. If y'all want to check out more of Colter and his crazy life, we'll drop the links to his socials and such in the notes. And thanks for coming on, man. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hell yeah.